Anybody could guess as to what really is the prize that we are going after as a country in terms of the whole Procurement Act and making sure that we have proper procurement practices in the country. A lot of persons would have been involved in the drafting of the initial act and so on, but when you look at what the OECD did in 2014, their report says that public procurement is one of the government's activities most vulnerable to corruption. And in their estimation, if done right, we can save between 20 and 10 and 30%. There is another slide I want to share with you also along these lines, 10 and 30%. So think for a moment. Our budget is about $52 billion per year on the expenditure side. If we say about 50% of that is spent on procurement activities, the rest on salaries and wages and so on, you're looking at a region of about $26 billion. If we split this in half and say, let's say 20% could be saved through efficiencies and erosion and getting rid of corruption, we are looking at the region of about $5.2 billion. I spoke to some people and they said I was just scratching the surface. $5.2 billion only on the budget side of things. We are not considering here the big companies who are self-sufficient. The FCBs, the National Gas, the Phoenix Park, the and so on. $5.2 billion a year for 10 years puts you in the region of $52 billion. We could run this country just in savings alone if we save over 10 years. Go back 59 years or so. And when we had real money running in this country, and a lot of allegation of corruption and so on, it tells you the amount of money we could have saved as a country. And then, when you look at what are some of the reasons, and a study was done by the European Commission, and they estimate that over $120 billion are lost each year due to corruption in the European Union. And some of the reasons for it is right here. In terms of the management of public procurement function, a huge portion is lost through mismanagement. And therefore, it is imperative that we have the legislation and all the ancillary regulations, handbooks and guidelines in place to ensure that we have proper management of the whole procurement regime. And therefore, out of that, the Office of Procurement Regulation was established by the Act 2015 as amended in 2016 and 2017. And the office itself, the members of the board were appointed in January of 2018, and all our members are on board. And we have our independence in terms of, we were appointed by the President in consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. Our independence is made clear in Section 13(2)(b) of the Act, which states that the office shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority in the performance of our function, but shall be accountable to Parliament. And that's very important. So, that said, we actually took up office in January, but it took a while to get our funding in place, our offices, and our employees. In fact, our first employee teacher came on board in July of last year. And I'm telling you that for a reason, to tell you where we started and where we are today. And the board itself would have met at different locations, and we were able to meet sometimes in rituals and sometimes in coffee shop and so on. I worked from home for about 3 months, and then we finally got our offices and so on. First couple of months, we had to literally take out the garbage, clean the toilets, mop the floor, getting the office going. Most of the time you'll hear about 4 principles advocated under the Act that you speak to accountability, integrity, transparency, and value for money. But the objects of the Act go it's a lot wider, and it speaks to efficiency, fairness, equity, public confidence, local industry development, sustainable procurement, and sustainable development. All those are objects of the Act. And you will see any breach of those could nullify contracts and so on. And we'll get to that in a short while. So while I go through these slides, I'm going to give you an update as to where we are in the process. First thing that we were supposed to do is to establish a comprehensive database of tenders and awarded contracts. So, on a quarterly basis, on the 20th of each month following the quarter, every public body has to report to the office all their contracts and tenders awarded, the value of the award, to whom it was awarded to, any variation order, and any issues associated with those. Previously, that was a big black hole. How it's going to be done, we have set up the database, and the database is serving a number of purposes. One is the reporting of contracts. Two is it's going to be the depository in terms of pre-qualification of contractors. And then we'll have a pre-qualified list of contractors, and all those will be on that database. So therefore, once that information comes to us on a quarterly basis, it is consolidated automatically on the system. And that is then used as a basis for reporting into Parliament, all the information associated with contracts awarded and so on. So that's the database. The database is in the final stages of being completed. The contract was awarded to Massey Technologies, and that is being completed as we speak. The testing will be done in the first and second week in October, and our go-live date will be the middle of October. And that's one of the database, and I'll explain to you how we intend to roll it out to the public bodies and the contractors who will want to get pre-qualified and so on. So that's well on its way. To set training standards, competency level, and certification requirements. What we have done so far, we held a conference workshop in September and October last year in Trinidad and Tobago. And coming out of that, we had a lot of suggestions in terms of how we could further develop our handbook, the handbook that we inherited from the UNDP. Some of the comments we got, it was just one handbook, it was too complicated. It was a lot of theory and it's difficult to follow. Last week we had our session in Port of Spain. Wednesday, Thursday, and half day of Friday, we met with all 80 procurement officers, named procurement officers. And in the afternoon of the Friday afternoon, we would have met with all the CEOs and chairmen. In South, we are meeting with another 80 procurement officers tomorrow, Thursday and Friday half day, and then we're meeting with another 80 CEOs and chairmen. And then in Tobago on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of October, we are meeting with the same number of people in terms of Tobago, the procurement officers, CEOs, and senior officers. And if you want to know what we would have discussed there, all our sessions in Port of Spain are now on our site, and you could go and look at any sessions that you want to in terms of the rollout. So all those are under the training standards. We thought that somebody would have actually stepped in that space to provide the training, and we realized nobody was stepping into that space, so we have taken up the mantle and started that process. So that's in terms of training standards. To issue guidelines on the retention and disposal of public property, I just mentioned we have about 27 we have completed, and we have loaded up a number of those already on site, and before the end of September we'll have all 27 live on the site. And these are all posted as drafts, so if people want to make final edits and recommended changes to it, we are willing to take those on board before we finalize it. And the only reason why we're not finalizing it is because we are waiting for the regulations to be completed, and then we'll pull the act, the regulations, and the handbooks and guidelines together. And we're hoping very soon that will happen. I'll give you an update as to where the regulations are also. All right, to prepare model handbooks with standardized bidding document, what we have found out is that as many as we have, for example, in terms of the regional corporation, you have 14 regional corporations, you have 14 different set of practices. Regional health authorities, same thing. Everybody has their own way of practicing. And therefore what we have done is to written specific guidelines to guide the procurement activities that the regional corporations will use, the health sector will use, works will use, NGOs, special purpose companies, we all have special handbooks and guidelines for that. And how it works is that you either take ours as we approve it, or you can decide that you want to make amendments to it. So ours we refer it to as general guidelines. If you take it and make amendments, it has to come back to the office for approval, and those are called special guidelines. and it's special for the different industries and so on. And as I said, all those are completed now. To promote the use of technology, of course, this is going to be ongoing. It's nice to have technology in place, but if we don't have the manual systems working properly, putting technology behind it is going to give us what we ask for. So we need to get the systems and processes and so on right, people following the handbooks, guidelines, acts and regulations. And in parallel with that, we'll be looking at e-procurement system. Anybody in the public sector who can afford to put e-procurement system in place, we are encouraging it. Because we think that there's a lot of benefits to be had from having e-procurement systems in place. Additionally, to harmonize policy systems and practices, again, what we find out is that everybody is practicing their own way, and we are going to issue specimen contracts and so on that you can literally use and take it as templates. Because what we found out also in some of the public bodies is that contracts sometimes are signed long after the contracts have been awarded, work has been executed, payments have been made, and then you fighting up with a contract. No longer is that going to be acceptable. You have to append your specimen contracts as part of your request for proposal. And that now is under guidelines that we have issued. And promote public awareness. So far, we have met with over 150 organizations since last year, when we started in September. And those 150 organizations, some of it like the Ministry of Health, we would have met together in one session about 150 persons. We have met with like the Presbyterian School of Education, the board and their teachers, over 150 persons in one session. The regional corporations with their minister, we would have met with all the regional corporations together, and then we are going one by one in meeting with them to find out what are the unique circumstances and so on. So 150, and we have also answered, in terms of queries, over 300 queries that has come to the office. We have gotten 6 so far whistleblowing issues that we were asked to investigate. Of course, we didn't have the investigative power, so we have channeled that to the respective line ministers to answer those particular questions. One of it has been successfully solved. In terms of what was bought, and it went through some processes and so on. Another one is now in arbitration, and the next 4 is still being handled. So even though the act is not fully proclaimed, persons have come forward and brought things to our attention, and we have been addressing those. Review practices and delivery system on annual. This is continuous improvement, that we'll be doing that.
Sorry, on what you just said. So you don't have the investigative capacity. So you've sent some queries on. The minister sends you the information that you request. What is your process for verification? That I'm just trying to figure out, without the investigative capacity, how do we know that the queries are going to be adequately resolved?
I'll give you the example that I said was sorted out. So that was an issue, without giving too much information. A particular contractor was involved in the contracting in a tender process, and the actual evaluation process was flawed. And I'll give you the details of it. What happened is that you, in one particular criteria, the minimum in the evaluation criteria would have been 1 point. And what they did when they did the evaluation for that particular contractor, they gave them a 0. And the minimum they stated in their document, the request for proposal, would have been 1 point. They lost the tender by 0.25. And if they had gotten that 1 point, and they went under the freedom of information and got the information, presented it to us, we spoke with the persons who were responsible in the public body for that particular tender. We didn't get an adequate response. We spoke to the chairman of the board. We didn't get an adequate response. So we took all the documentation, sent it off to the line minister. The line minister sent it back down, and they were forced to deal with it and accepted that they made a mistake. So that's how we know that it was handled through the whole process. It's now the subject of costs and so on associated with loss of profit and so on. But that's an example of what would have transpired, even though we didn't have the full investigative form, but the coercive thing that we would have done to get it to the state. So those are some of the things that we're doing. If we had the investigative power, we would not have had to go through all those.
So you have the ability to deal with it at the lower level.
Yeah.
If the minister is involved with, they say, like the Sea Bridge issue and all that,
Yeah.
you really have no.
We have no powers.
Right.
Okay. All right, and to act for the state to dispose of real property. Now, this under section 13O tells us that we were supposed to act for and on behalf of the state and so on. But we, when we appeared before the Joint Select Committee of Parliament, we expressed some concerns that this particular part of the act is not going to. We will have some difficulty in getting effective. Basically, what it says in the act is that we should rubber stamp what the government is telling us to do in terms of disposal. And the regulations associated with that is for negative resolution. And the minister is supposed to prepare those. So in our update to the minister, we don't think anything is being done in the background to get that done. And therefore we wrote the minister and said, give us the opportunity to prepare those regulations to send to you as part of the update that we would have sent. So we did do that. We are waiting for a response on that. But that in itself, we have notified Parliament that we have some concerns about that particular part of the act. Advice on best practice to obtain value for money. On a regular basis, you hear these stories about the purchase of equipment in the medical field. You buy the equipment, you have it there, and you run to failure. No maintenance contract. Nobody thinks about a maintenance contract. You put up these nice, big, expensive buildings and so on. There is no maintenance associated with it. So we are saying it should be the full value. And when you're doing your request for proposal, you should take into consideration all these things to get a maximum value for money. This is just one of the examples that we are looking at, and we have indicated that in the guidelines as to how we propose for public bodies to deal with. And then the last two item on this is that we have audit and review authority to go in on a periodic basis to audit all public bodies. And then if something comes to our attention in terms of any breach of the act or regulations and so on, we can investigate upon complaint from any party involved in public procurement or disposal of public property or any member of the public. If we read something in the newspaper, it comes to us anonymously and so on. We have the power to investigate. So we have a full team of investigators and auditors on board. We were very fortunate to get on board a very eminent lawyer who came free of charge. We lobbied, got him. He serves on some of the Caribbean courts in terms of a judge. And he came on board and he has had 6 sessions with us so far with our audit and investigation team and all our lawyers. And he's helping us now in terms of training of these investigators, in terms of putting together case files and so on. We also met with the police commissioner, we met with the financial intelligence unit, and we met with the DPP to put things in place in terms of preparation of files when we do our investigation, what we have to look for, what completes the file to make it. So when we finish the file in terms of an investigation, you don't have to go to the DPP, then it goes to the police, and then you have to go through a whole process again. So once we can get it in good format, it goes to the DPP, we can prosecute on that behalf. Our point of contact right now in the DPP's office will be the DPP himself until they give us a deputy DPP to work with, but he is the point of contact. So that's in terms of investigation. So the obvious question is, who falls under the Act? And I can tell you that a number of organizations who legitimately supposed to fall under the Act is trying all sorts of reasons why they can't fall under the Act. And they're seeking all sorts of a legal interpretation, etc. And every single one that has sought legal interpretation, told them, you fall under the Act. So, and the question from our point of view is, why wouldn't you want to fall under the Act? It is good, best practice. What it is that you're trying to hide. So we've made a list of all those, and they are on our high priority list. Enough said. So the office of the president, as the president of the country, the parliament, even though we report into parliament, the judiciary, and we have met with the president's office, we have met with parliament, we have met with the judiciary, right down to the industrial court, all of them, they fall under the Act. a ministry or department or division of a ministry, Tobago House of Assembly or division of a Tobago House of Assembly. Again, we've met with them, all the municipal corporation, regional health authorities, statutory bodies, state controlled enterprises, service commissions, body corporate or unincorporated entity using public money. We've met with most of these people in the 150 individual organization that I mentioned. Most of them, we have a couple ministries that we have not met with. For example, Ministry of Housing. We have to meet with them, we have not met with them, and most of the ministries would have reached out to us. We are now in the process of reaching out to them and insisting that we must meet with them. And when we meet with them, we meet with the operational staff and their board of directors. So,
which ones have not reached out? Just curious.
Housing is one, planning is the next one. I think those are the only two so far, but all the others we have met in different forums. So we will make sure that we push on that side. So we do have a plan. We have a list of all the ones that we would have met with. Not only that, but the last one there is of particular importance because that a body corporate or unincorporated entity using public money, and then public money is defined as money that is received or received by a public body, raised by an instrument from which can be reasonably inferred that the state accepts ultimate liability in the case of default, spent or committed for future expenditure by a public body, distributed by a public body to a person. And that has captured now a lot of individuals. For example, all school boards, all sporting organizations that benefit from subvention from sports, TT. And we have met with all the sporting organizations in one session with Sports TT. We've met with every one of them, their executive. So they are fully aware of their obligations now under the Act, that they are supposed to fall in line. And that is in itself, all NGOs that benefit from public money, they also fall under the Act. So you can imagine now the net is so wide. And we have to now work with all these different individuals who before never even thought about doing anything in terms of procurement. They get the money, they go and spend, no accountability. So that now has caught a number of people under the net. We did meet with a number of the NGOs last year, like all the other agencies, school boards and so on. Right? And then some definitions that we like to share in terms of things like bid rigging, collusion between persons for the purpose of manipulating the proceedings. Now, that's the definition in the Act. And when we met with the legal person who is advising us, and also with the DPP, they both pointed us that the definition under the Act is deficient. It doesn't create an offense under the Act. And there is no other legislation that creates an offense for bid rigging. So what we have suggested, we have made an amendment to the Act and sent it to the Minister to table in Parliament to amend that part of the Act. There are a couple other areas that we have suggested amendments. So this is one of the areas that we asked for the amendment to make sure it's an offense.
Can I ask a question on the Act? Because I read somewhere that the Act is only partially proclaimed and not fully.
Yeah.
And I'm not certain that I really understand what it implies. What part of the Act is not operational?
Yeah, the parts that were partially proclaimed in July of 2015, really were the sections that allowed the office to be set up, the appointment of the board, and then to get the board to start working on all the other aspects of putting things in place, like the databases, the handbooks and guidelines, regulations. And now that we have put all those things in place, we have also approached the government to have further proclamation. So while you ask that question, part of what we asked the minister to do is all the sections of the Act now that the board is in place and we have all our employees on board. The sections that do not require regulations, go ahead and proclaim those. And we have listed all those and we have said, go ahead and proclaim. The minister promised that we push it on an open door, he will do it. And then the regulations as it's passed through Parliament, then you proclaim the others. And there is one section that is of concern in terms of section 7.2 of the Act in terms of public-private partnership arrangement, which we are doing some more work in because what we found out is that the government's policy on PPP is not fully articulated. And that has to be fixed before we attempt to write the regulations. and we have met with the minister.
So what does it imply in practice? If the office is set up, but the parts of the Act that allow you to effectively function, exercise your mandate is not yet proclaimed. Is that a correct interpretation?
That's right.
So you depend on the proclamation to effectively
give
start
the-
rolling out what,
Yes.
what you in fact already started rolling out in a sense.
That's right.
So what is the time frame for having it proclaimed?
The time kept shifting until we reached the stage now where on the 2nd of September this year, we sent all the remaining documents to the Minister of Finance. And we met with the Minister of Finance on the 3rd, which is the day after. And the dates that were promised to us was that the documents would be tabled in Cabinet last week, Thursday, and it's supposed to have gone to FNGP yesterday. So I haven't heard from the Minister an update yet, so I wrote him officially today. I said, please give me an update based on what you promised, and he indicated by the 19th of September we would have gone through. What we have done also, in parallel with meeting with the ministry, we met with the CPC, Chief Parliamentary Council, who are the ones responsible for finally drafting to take it to Parliament and so on. And we met with them, and we keep meeting with them. They have promised to meet with us while it goes through the process of going through Cabinet. They promised to meet with us to walk through the document so that when they do receive it from the other end, it will be well advanced. So we're trying to short circuit that, and the CPC has agreed to work with that. In fact, they have brought on a special legal person to deal with specifically our regulations. So it's taking traction.
So just to be clear, what is the commitment you have from the government for the 19th of September?
Once it goes through Cabinet and it goes through the FNGP, it will be passed on to the CPC for final drafting to take to the Parliament.
But we don't know if it has gone to Cabinet.
Yeah, so I should know, hopefully he will respond to me today or tomorrow, and then I'll have a better idea of what would have transpired.
Hopefully our friends in the media could help you with that.
Most certainly.
Speaking of which, Cambridge from CNCJ, sorry. I just wondered if you find it strange, or worse, deliberate, that a law that is supposed to regulate the spending and administration of public money neglected to make bid rigging unfit.
Well, it was in the draft, it was in the Act. But in going through the definition as written in the Act, we were advised that it is not, the way it is drafted needs some work. And the question is, I'm not sure how it got passed and whether or not they took the necessary steps. Remember, this was passed in 2015 under the previous regime. They had the necessary majority and so on to get it passed. And I'm not so sure what steps were. But when we also met with the DPP, he mentioned the same thing to us, that there was a deficiency. So we need to make sure that when this now is proclaimed, that the definitions are strong enough to get people caught under that particular bid rigging. And there is another area of concern that we have that I'll come to shortly. I'll skip these in terms of local development, pre-selection, private party, and all these things. These are definitions that you can get straight from the Act. And the PPP, this is an area where a lot of work has to be done now. And we have gotten an invitation from the Minister of Finance to assist in helping to deal with that whole issue of PPP and so on. So we are working together to see if we can sort of that in the quickest possible time. Because if we do go for full proclamation, this is one of the areas that may not be proclaimed at this time. That has us concerned because a number of these government-to-government arrangements and so on. In fact, the government-to-government arrangements, the international lending agencies arrangement, and all these, it was written in such a way that the heads of agreement will stand. However, any procurement of goods, works, and services has to follow our Act. And in some of these cases, they want to follow GEAR guidelines and so on. We are saying that we should follow our Act because it's robust enough to actually deal with these arrangements and so on. So that's an issue that has some contention. And we know and there would have proven to be some difficult times that we will face with it. So we're going through that process right now.
When you get the capability to investigate, because as it stands now you can't investigate, right? Could you investigate retroactively? So could you go back to the HDC, Chinese firm agreement, the Seabird issue, can you do that?
We sought a legal senior counsel opinion on Section 70 of the Act. Section 70 seems to suggest that we do have that authority. However, what it does not give us the authority to do is to investigate under the Act. But we can investigate the event under existing approved policies and procedures. And if we find culpability in terms of criminal activities and so on, we can then go through the law that would have been in existence. So it's not under the new Act, but under existing practices, for example, Central Tenders Board, the procurement and so on. If it would have infringed on those things, we can investigate. That is the opinion. Now, there's a school of thought that says that we probably don't have that authority, and we intend to test it. We do intend to test it when the time comes to see if it stands scrutiny. But Section 70, if you read it, you'll see there's some of it there. All right. So any procurement of goods, works or services, or retention and disposal that is not done in accordance with this Act, and any procurement contract or agreement that is not entered into in accordance with the Act shall be void and illegal. That gives a lot of powers in the hands of the office. But we're not going to just wield those powers. We must have the supporting information and documents during the investigation to make sure that we have everything on board to make those void and illegal. But we do have that power. Additionally, in the exercise of the function, of course, we should act expeditiously in terms of the economics and so on. So we just don't shut down contracts willy-nilly, but we must have the experience. Under Section 16 of the Act, it gives us the authority to appoint committees of the board. And what we have done, we have appointed a number of committees to deal with things like challenge proceedings, ineligibility, and so on. And we are hoping once the regulations are passed, because the regulations also indicate the individuals who we are looking for to join these committees with the necessary expertise out from the public that could join these committees so that we have some more independence in terms of those committees. And I mean civil servants who would have resigned, experts in different areas and so on, bringing them on board. So that's one of the things that we are doing. Additionally, a supplier or contractor may bring challenge proceedings where it is alleged that a procuring entity made a decision or took an action that is not in compliance with the Act, and they would have the supplier or contractor suffered or is likely to suffer loss. They can bring a challenge proceeding. Within 3 days of bringing that challenge proceedings, we have to advertise it in 2 newspapers. And then conduct the hearing and so on. And the office may, within 3 days of the receipt of that application, we can take certain action. Order the suspension of the procurement proceeding at any time where you have entered into a contract or where you have not entered into the contract, or order the suspension of the performance of a framework agreement or a contract that has entered into force and is actually being operational. If we have sufficient information that something went wrong, we can suspend that, if and for as long as we think it is necessary to protect the interests of the person making the challenge. So a number of these contracts, if we find that there is non-compliance with the Act, is something that we can stop. To avoid some of these frivolous, what we will call challenges and so on, for all what we consider to be high risk, high value, the big contracts, there is now a recommendation for a standstill period in the Act. How the standstill period works is that there is a period of time before you actually award the contract. And it came out from some case in the European Union, where for that standstill period, a period between 10 and 15 days, which we have put in the regulations. Once you have gone through the process, you have gone through the request for proposal, you've gotten the bids, you have done your evaluation, and you are about to award the contract. You are now required to notify the potential successful bidder and all the persons who would have participated in the bidding process. You have to notify them and give them information as to who you're going to award it to, the value, and allow them a period of time to challenge the award. And you can challenge it if you have good reason to, and the public entity has to give you a review process. So they must tell you why you weren't successful and give you the reasons. If after that process has gone through and you are satisfied, then if there are no further challenge, you go ahead and award on the 11th day. Once you award, there is no room for challenge after that. If you still believe that you are aggrieved and you didn't get a sufficiently good reason from the procuring entity, you can bring a challenge to the office, and then we take it up under the challenge proceedings. And we, if required, during that period of time, we could ask for an extension of the standstill period, because then we have enough reason to believe that something has gone wrong and you should not award. And once cleared by the office, then you could go ahead and award. So that's going to safeguard you from awarding a contract and then having it stopped in the middle of the performance of the contract. So that's how the standstill period goes. Alright, so now, previously, you would have had these every 3 years pre-qualification that you would have to pre-qualify by public bodies. You go and you put, you wait until the newspaper advertisement comes out and you do your pre-qualification and so on. And sometimes you apply to be pre-qualified and the public body say, well, we're not in that process right now, we have to wait for the next 3 years and so on. No longer is that required now. You can go into our procurement repository at any time, 24/7, and this is part of the database. You have mandatory fields that you have to put in the information, and once you put in the information there, in terms of the depository, then that, once it's completed, through a workflow process, it comes to our attention that it's complete, and then we send it to one of the public bodies to do their due diligence in reviewing it. And once they are satisfied, they send a message back to us on the online, and we switch them from the depository into the pre-qualification list. You are now, we are required to keep the pre-qualification database for the entire public sector. And you should only draw from that pre-qualification list to invite persons to tender. The question is, if you're going out for a tender and you don't have anybody on that pre-qualified listing, what happens? Then you do a parallel run. In parallel with your request for proposal, you do the pre-qualification together and you ask the potential suppliers to go through the depository and get pre-qualified. Once you get pre-qualified here, so you can be qualified for this particular tender, then you go onto the permanent database. Once you're on the database, you only come off when you are ineligible. And I'll tell you how you become ineligible. So what that does now, it avoids all these every 3 years pre-qualification exercise. You know how much it costs to do a pre-qualification exercise? 3 advertisements, 3 daily newspaper, each advertisement costs you $5,000. And 3 newspaper for 1 day, that's $15,000, and you do it twice, like $30,000. The internal resources that you take in going through hundreds of these applications, it comes up to about $150,000. So you spend up to about almost $200,000 just doing one pre-qualification exercise. For every pre-qualification exercise that you do, every 5 of those pre-qualification will save you $1 million. Multiplied by 250 more or less public bodies and so on, you're looking in the region of $50 million that you can save in terms of pre-qualification. And what happens then is that you are able to pull from that pre-qualification list of database. And previously, if you are disqualified from participating with a particular state enterprise, you can go next door and get pre-qualified as if nothing happened. Now if you are made ineligible, that is published to the whole country and to every procurement officer, so they are aware, do not deal with this particular contract. Alright, and pre-qualification. Here are some of the things that you have to be aware of in terms of pre-qualifying contractors under Section 29(1) of the Act. It says that procuring entity shall ensure that the supplier and contractor have the legal capacity to enter into the procurement contract, so you must make sure that these persons are alive. Now I said that for a reason, because one of our legal persons went to a conference recently and they found out that in some of these registries you have deceased persons and they have not been removed. So you must make sure that they have the legal capacity. They are empowered to act on behalf of the organization, are not insolvent in receivership, bankrupt, or being wound up. Their affairs are not being administered by a court or judicial officer. Their business activities have not been suspended, and they are not the subject of legal proceeding from any of the foregoing. And then the other one, which is creating some serious issues. If you read it, just read it on its own. Have not, and their directors or officers have not been convicted of any criminal offense. Criminal offense is wild. Driving under the influence of alcohol. It's a criminal offense. So you're debarred from doing business and being pre-qualified. So this is another one where we thought we need to ask for an amendment to clarify this issue in terms of what constitutes. And we have now come up, Afra?
My question, if we were to amend 429D(C), I would add shareholders. Because if the intention in writing C is to target companies which should come under criminal influence, I don't want to look at directors, officers only. If X owns the company, and he brings in directors and officers who are young nephews and nieces who've never been convicted of anything, I don't want the state to be giving X any contracts. So if you're going to amend C, my suggestion to you, and just moving forward, is to say to you, these the directors, officers, or shareholders. That's my suggestion. Respectfully.
Yeah.
If that is the intention.
We'll take it and take it back to my lawyers and the drafters. But those are the kind of recommendations that we're looking forward to. Because what we are suggesting here, if you read this as is, half a Trinidad becomes ineligible. I mean, any type of criminal offense. So what we are suggesting in this place has to be like professional misrepresentation, and even after, you have to have a cooling off period of, say, 3 years. So after 3 years, you get back into the system. Because if you don't do that, you don't give people an opportunity to recover after being convicted of an offense. So you want to give them that opportunity. In some of the jurisdictions, they have 5 years. Some of the jurisdictions took it up to 10 years. And we are suggesting, a lot of jurisdictions have it 3 years, and we suggest a 3-year period of cooling off. So that's how that part of the act we are suggesting that it be amended to capture that. And this is convicted of any criminal offense and not alleged to be involved in any criminal offense, which is something that is in the public domain right now also. I'm sure that you're going to have some comments also. This one is also important. And in the discussion, and people ask about, so how do you deal with the small men caterers and so on? It says that you must have fulfilled your obligation to pay all required taxes and contributions. And therefore, if you are in receipt of income under the Income Tax Act, you must pay your taxes. And if you have employees, you must pay NIS. And you have to show us either you have discharged your obligation to pay your taxes or you have an exemption. Otherwise, you don't get pre-qualified. And you have the necessary, of course, professional, technical qualification, competencies, financial resources. And what we are suggesting is that if you are looking at contracts from 0 to 100,000, you must be able to get a bank letter stating that you have the financial capability. 100,000 to 2 million, we are suggesting 3 years of management account signed by 2 directors. Over 2 million, which is the high risk, high value categories, you must have 3 years of audited financial statements. And not audited financial statement by anybody, but by somebody who is qualified so to do by the Institute of Chartered Accountants registered as an auditor and so on.
you need to get back to the seabird. You have to be able to investigate that based on what you just said. You need to get back to the ocean floor too and the cows and bridge ones. Because you don't want audited financials for a certain period and X, Y, and Z. Your legal people need to find a way for you to investigate retroactively.
Well, I'm also going to suggest something here in terms of, but that's a good point too. Additionally, a number of our special purpose companies will go before joint select committees and have not done their audited financial statement for 10 and 15 years. Now, if you are spending public money and you're acting for on behalf of the state, that means that you are a contractor to a public body, it might be a ministry. And therefore, if you cannot show me that after you have received all these $2 million and above for a number of years, and you cannot have your audited financial statement, you don't get pre-qualified. And if you don't get pre-qualified, you don't act on behalf of the state in executing contract. That's our interpretation and we're sticking by it. That is going to create some issues, but that's fine. We cannot say that you are transparent and accountable under the principles of transparency, accountability, value for money, and integrity. If I cannot see audited financial statements, then where is the transparency and the accountability? That's one of the areas of accountability that we are insisting must be present for you to pre-qualify. Again, I can tell you that is creating some issues, but we are intending to stick to our guns on that particular one. All right, meet relevant industry standards, and we all know, like in the construction sector, you have your HSSE policies to be approved. If you're working on a live plant, like in the Petrotrins and the PPGPLs and NGCs, you have to have store certification. All those are industry-specific things that you have to pre-qualify. So you could pre-qualify for construction, but to go the extra step in terms of construction within a live plant, you must be store certified. And that again will come through further due diligence when you are pre-selected. Any requirement established pursuant to this section shall be set out in the pre-qualification or pre-selection document, if any, and in the solicitation document, and it shall apply equally to all suppliers or contractors. So if you have a special purpose company that is providing management services, and you have a private company who provides the same management services, they should be treated equally. And there should be no preferential treatment of handing things to a particular company to execute. So that's part of the whole issue in terms of transparency now. Do you hand these contracts to a particular state enterprise, or do you go through this transparent process of making sure all your pre-qualified contractors are equally treated? And we are quite clear in what the Act is saying under 29. So the ineligibility listing.
Yes, I want to go back to something we were point 2 steps ago about the shareholder. I think it was 29.4 about the shareholder side. Yeah, 4 section 4C. And I wanted to say that it should link.
That's a useful point. I forgot to say it when I made that contribution. It should link neatly, in my opinion, with the whole question about the unknown beneficial owner of a company. Yes, and the whole question of company ownership, transparency, and so on. There was a recent seminar with you guys and the TTTI, ITI, and so on this question. And in fact, we should have it as an exclusion. If it is that a company is coming forward to pre-qualify company X, and we are unable to identify who are the unofficial, the unknown beneficiary owner, we need to know who that is. Okay, so we have a situation like Bridgman. And Bridgman is just the latest one of many, many other situations where we have massive contracts given out. We actually don't know who the companies are. So I think this is an opportunity, if you are revisiting C, to put that in as not just a requirement to have the shareholders not be convicted of a criminal offense, but to have the shareholders identified to satisfy the requirements of ultimate beneficial owner. That's what I'd like to put out forward as a
What I didn't mention also is that we did meet with the FIU. We are entering a memorandum of agreement with the FIU for sharing information. So some of that will come out in terms of that aspect of it.
Sure.
In the ineligibility, and it comes back to the point that you were raising after. The ineligibility list is of suppliers who shall not participate in procurement proceedings. You become ineligible where you have consistently failed to provide satisfactory performance. Now, a lot of public bodies that we have met with says, well, this particular contractor, we should put them on an ineligible list. We ask the question, so where is the evidence of poor performance? We don't like to document things. You say the contractor not performing, but there is no document to support what you are saying. So you have to have your documentation, because when they come, the process is that you make a recommendation, it then comes to the office, and we have to conduct our own review before we place them on that ineligibility list. And you have to come forward with the case, and the contractor will be given an opportunity to be heard. And if you don't have your documentation and your evidence, it's going to be difficult. The other two might be easier, because then it's found to be indulging in corrupt or fraudulent practices. Once it's proven and is convicted of an offense under this act. And of course, you must give them opportunity to be heard. Under B and C, you will be debarred and made ineligible for a period of 10 years. So for that period, you cannot participate in any public offering. And the persons that will be debarred, Ravi?
That's a question on 29D for tax compliance. How are you going to interact with the Water and Land Revenue to validate that taxes are paid? Given they have a current debacle with the Auditor General regarding, I think, Section 4, which is secrecy in the actual data they hold, and not making that information available to the Auditor General. So, if you are looking for compliant behavior, you are clearly tethered between the BIR and IS. So your contractor database has awarded contracts and values. Is there any reconciliation between that and the income taxes filed to see if the level of taxes paid is correct? Because you said taxes owed to Trinidad and Tobago. You didn't say a tax clearance certificate specifically.
Well, the evidence of that will be that tax clearance certificate from the board, signed by some representative of the board, that they have discharged the obligations to the
What
board.
do you do when you pick up an incongruence between contracts awarded and income filed?
Well, we wouldn't be privy to that information in terms of income filed.
Right.
That's the Board of Inland
Would you
Revenue.
be sharing that information with the BIR?
But it will actually be public information now. Because all contracts awarded will be published, and it will be part of the information that is
So the suggestion I put forward from the floor, we can't have $10 million awarded in contract
and
and tax filing for $5 million.
So I'm hoping that the Board of Inland Revenue reads that report, because it will be broken down by public bodies. These are all the contracts that we awarded the value on the side, and we are going to use this for correlation to see if there is any particular relationship between contractors and particular ministries and so on. Once we publish that information, you will see all total value of contracts awarded to all contractors. So that will be public information. So the Board of Inland Revenue can easily look at it and say, well, let me look at your financial statements, your tax return, and see if it agrees with what you was awarded by the public.
It's a question long asked. If you interact with the state, the question of remitting appropriate emoluments back to the state should not be a challenging one for the state.
Supplier contractor includes any person who is a director, manager, senior officer, partner, or other similar officer, or any person who calls staff in such a capacity. So it leaves all the shareholding. But we name all the persons who would have been involved and now ineligible. There's a lot of issues in terms of who is responsible for procurement. And under the a number of existing pieces of legislation, it gives the powers to be involved in procurement by the board and subcommittees of the board and so on. And under the Act 61(2), it specifically said, but I go to 61(1) first, any person who contravenes the section referred to in the first column of Schedule 1 commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the penalty specified in the third column. And then it goes on to say, for the purpose of this act, a public body shall have a procurement officer who shall be responsible for public procurement and the disposal of public property for that body, and shall notify the office in writing of the name and designation of the procurement officer. So every public body must have a procurement officer. And that's a challenge we're facing right now because we don't believe that all public bodies have put in place the mechanism, although they were warned 2.5 years ago to put it in place. And if a reference, of course, in the active commission of the offense is a reference to the commission of the offense by the procurement officer. And if anybody puts themselves in the position of the procurement officer, they will be held liable under the act. So the boards who want to continue to get involved, we are recommending you don't. In fact, some of the boards would have written seeking advice in terms of whether or not, if your document that brought you intervened said that you will be involved through the subcommittees and so on, it eventually reached the CPC for advice, and the CPC would advise and said, in no uncertain terms, the act supersedes what is written in your legislation, and therefore it is impliedly repealed, and you should take the necessary step to have it expressly repealed, to make sure there is no gray areas. Our legal team is now going through a process to identify all the pieces of legislation that is in conflict with our act, to make sure that that information gets to the Attorney General to make the necessary amendments and so on and steps. So we are very clear, and you should not get involved. The procurement officer, and what we are suggesting that they put in place is a procurement and disposal advisory committee that looks after the back of the accounting officer, who is ultimately responsible operationally for executing contracts and so on. And we have had that session with all the chairmen and CEOs, Friday gone, this Friday, and then Tobago. And we continue to have these sessions to notify the CEOs and so on of their roles under the new regime. And they are responsible for actually approving the procedures, handbooks, and guidelines and so on. The governance part of it, not the operational, getting involved. So I mentioned we like to look at this through the lens of, because we have people in the construction industry here with us. This is what we have done with the original handbook and guideline that we inherited from the UNDP. What you have at the top of the house, we have developed a comprehensive handbook on procurement, retention and disposal, and then a basic simplified version for persons to use as quick reference guide. And also, if you don't use our handbooks and guidelines, how you go about preparing your own handbooks and guidelines. So we have a guideline on that also, to allow you to prepare. And then on the foundational part of the building, the framework for internal control for procurement, the roles and responsibility of the procurement officer, the accounting officers, and so on, the guidelines for the health sector, state control, NGOs, local governments, works, and legal services. In fact, we met with the executive of the Law Association, because we wanted to make sure that they understand that now to provide services as lawyers, you have to be pre-qualified. And you have to also pre-qualify in terms of getting your financial statements and so on inside our system. So all lawyers, we sent the draft pre-qualification document for them to review and give us their feedback, because we think we have a good procedure in place. So they have to be pre-qualified. Doctors who are providing specialist services and so on to the health sector, they also have to be pre-qualified. So again, some challenging times, but law is law. Right, Winston? And also the code of conduct. Together with the Integrity Commission, we have prepared some code of conduct for practice among public bodies, employees of public bodies, and developing procurement capacity. We have a guideline on how we go about developing those capacities. Monitoring, managing, and reporting on procurement performance. I mentioned the whole issue of how you collate your information and how you get it to us. And then whistleblowing and challenge proceedings. We have our documents completed for whistleblowing. And now we deal with that. Even though the bill wasn't passed in Parliament, we have taken some parts of that to develop our own policy. We are in active discussion with a firm that is outside the country in terms of managing our case management system and also our whistleblowing facility. Because we suspect that there will be some concerns about having local telephone numbers and all these different things. So we have literally put a Chinese wall there. And we have recently written the Trinidad ambassador to that country to do some background checking firm that we are looking at. That is in an advanced stage of discussion right now. So that will be very shortly, it will be in place in terms of the whistleblowing. And then all the handbooks and guidelines, we have broken it down into some pillars in the house. Planning, tendering, evaluation and award, contract management, and retention and disposal. All these are books and guidelines, easy reference, and we are working with the European Commission right now in terms of their assistance in putting this in a digital format. So that it will be very easy to follow once we finalize them. It will be easy to search through things and have it at your fingertips. So all that is part of the process that we are going through. All these have been substantially completed. The ones in green is the ones that we discussed in last week, this week, and when we in Tobago. They are all online, but there are a lot more online right now as I speak. So if you want to look at any one of those, you go online, read them, make comments and so on. And we have made them with a lot of examples, worked examples, so that you can literally take it as a reference manual if you're not familiar with procurement and use it as a user's manual. Very user-friendly to work with. All right, so this also was the constructed Vincent by Pastor. So she has construction experience. All right, and then this is just gives us an idea of some of the consequences for not following the act. In terms of once we have things sorted out in terms of the amendments. Splitting of procurement, 500,000. Now all these are and not all. And 1 year in prison. So of course people could get involved in some of these things and pay the fine, but go behind the bars is a different story now. Right? Breach of confidentiality, same thing, victimization. Say somebody does want to follow the proper procedure and somebody in authority decides that they're going to victimize them, the person in authority will be hauled before the court. Failure to report collusion, concealing, destroying information required for an investigation. You know, we have this habit of mysterious files, containers getting water soaked, rat-eating documents and all these kind of things. No longer is that a reason for not providing information during an investigation. It's $5 million and 10 years in prison. So we have a whole manual that we have developed in terms of document management system and the requirements and retention and for documents and so on. That is also completed. Failure to comply with requirements with respect to confidentiality during a challenge proceedings, 500,000, 1 year in prison. Failure to comply with the direction of the office, just a small fine, 100,000, no jail term here. But that is mine. Failure of a member of the board, my board, or a committee constituted by the board to declare knowingly or willfully to disclose an interest during a hearing, we can face some penalties, 500,000, 1 year in prison. False report to the office, 500,000, 1 year. Conduct influencing public officers in case of bribery, conflict of interest, corrupt, fraudulent, collusive, coercive, or obstructive practices. Upon conviction, 1 million. And 5 years. Bid rigging, which we're going to firm up in terms of the definition and so on. That will be $5 million and 10 years in prison. Altering a procurement document to influence the outcome of the procurement proceedings, whether you put false financial statements or making false representation and so on, $2 million and 7 years in prison. And then contravention of a regulation made by the minister, up to $1 million and 5 years in prison. So those are some of the consequences.
I just want to be clear. With all of that in place, that means nothing as it stands. Because you have not a single ability to investigate anything.
That's right. We get in there. We on the last leg now, making sure that those regulations get passed, and we could expect support from this group and other groups to make sure that the message gets loud and clear that we need these regulations and the further proclamation of the act.
And that was supposed to go to cabinet last Thursday.
That's it. All right. So where are we? The OPR has completed 95% of the recruitment, about 97% now. We just have 1 or 2 positions that we have to fill. Mr. was asking me, are we sitting down and not doing anything, waiting for full proclamation? Absolutely not. We have so much of hope breathing through our ears. And with meetings, we sometimes meet twice a day, and all these queries and so on and so on. A lot of companies have decided that they want to start operating as if the act has been proclaimed. A number of companies. We have just reviewed WASAs, we have tender rules and so on. We have met with the organization. We have TNTech one in place. TNTech is advanced. A number of the organizations have taken all the necessary steps to put things in place. We met with the Full Heritage Board, all the management, personnel, and so on, and they are putting measures in place also. So we're very happy with the work that is going on, notwithstanding we do have full proclamation. The area of concern really is the ministries. Because with the advent of the full proclamation, the ministries will have 3 months to get everything in place. Because after 3 months, the Central Tenders Board Act goes away, and Section 28 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act goes away. So they must put things in place. And imagine that the ministries who would have before depended on the CTB, they do not have a CTB to prop them up again. They have to be self-sufficient. So that's going to be a major challenge. That's why we are going through these detailed discussion and so on. But that in itself will not be sufficient if you don't have procurement officers appointed and start going through the process of developing their capacities. All right, so the draft regulations, as I said, that went through the process. The database is well on its way in October. Final version for the handbooks completed by the end of September. And we have appeared before the Joint Select Committee on several occasions. We would have sent updates to them. This is now a public document if you want to go on the Parliament site. It gives you all the details of all the work that we would have done so far and what is now required for the ministries to put their house in order. So it's a public document. So ladies and gentlemen, that's in a nutshell.
On the appointment of procurement officer, I didn't see anything that allows for the officer not to be influenced, under influence by higher authorities. I know that could be something that could improve the process of transparency there.
The issue is that the procurement officer is the one responsible for procurement and disposal of public property. That person is responsible. So that person, we cannot, and what we found out in discussions with the regional corporation, to answer the point more pointedly. Regional corporation, you have temporary clerical workers fulfilling the role of procurement officers. You asking for problems. That cannot be acceptable, not in this day and age. And therefore you must appoint proper persons and make sure that you have, these persons are handling millions of dollars.
So therefore he will have sufficient independence to act.
And we are suggesting that that person do not report to a number of persons going up the ladder. But that procurement officer should have a direct reporting relationship to the accounting officer or the chief executive officer or the president. That's the importance of the position. That has to be signaled very clearly in the appointments of these positions.
The question on international tenders, because we spent quite a bit of attention on time on the pre-qualification procedures. So if you have a big open international tender, do you expect international companies to be pre-registered as well? How would that work?
Yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. And they must have, for example, if they are operating, they must have demonstrated their ability to fulfill the requirements for withholding taxes and all these different things. So it's very clear that pre-qualification did not say only local contractors, local and foreign.
Right. So, but say an international company that may have an interest to bid in a process at a certain point in time, can register for pre-qualification at any point in time?
Yes. The database will be open. The database will be open 24/7.
Okay.
So if somebody in Australia while he's sleeping, they can go on the database and put in all the information. How the database also works, because the question is there a time limit? After 3 years, you get knocked off for the database. A number of fields on the database is time sensitive, so that, for example, if you have to put forward your workman's compensation insurance, and the workman's compensation insurance is going to expire on a particular date, you are required to put in that expiry date. 3 months before the expiry date, you get a notice saying it is about to expire. 1 month before, you get another notice. And then on the day of expiring, you get a notice, and if you don't rectify it, you get locked out of the system. So you have to be very careful in terms of those notices, and it will be driven by a workflow process. The person who is named on the email and so on, you get knocked off the system. Of course, we'll get a running list of the persons, and we will take the necessary step of taking up the phone and calling them and saying, hey, you realize you've been knocked off the system. So that's always going to be done. So that will continuously be updated. And then what we're trying to do in terms of local capacity development, if you're in the region of 0 to 100,000, we expect you over a period of time to move into the next category and the next category in terms of developing your capacity. The database will be by region, so you'll be pre-qualified by regional corporation. Tobago is another region, CARICOM is a third region, and then international is the fourth region. So you can literally go into different regions and get the different contractors and so on.
You mentioned that the net is very wide in terms of all the participants in the process. Much as I would like to see you succeed, I mean, I'm thrilled to hear all the things that you're putting in place and have put in place. But I have difficulty in being confident that with the net so wide, that you are able to cope with the volume of work that you have to do.
We are adopting a risk-based approach to this work. Unless you put that in a proper risk management system, you're going to be running down behind a whole set of frivolous things. So for example, all these big major contracts, those will be high on our priority list. Once, what we're going to do in terms of, once you have published your list of activities at the beginning of the year, we are then going to look specifically at that list and risk prioritize the contracts that are coming on stream and pay particular attention to our routine audits. It will be on a risk-based approach to auditing. Investigations will also be similarly managed. So we will develop our own risk matrix based on the outcome of that risk, the activity set that will have been published. That's how we intend to deal with it. So we're not going to run down these small NGOs and so on and get a couple $100. And so we will pay attention to their process in terms of helping them along. When I met with the Institute of Chartered Accountants and the Institute of Internal Auditors, they specifically requested, how could we help? And I said, if each member of the Institute of Internal Auditors and Institute of Chartered Accountants adopt an NGO, that in itself will help in terms of the governance process, and you'll be able to give back to society in helping build capabilities. We say thanks very much for affording me the privilege to share with you. I think I am always happy to come out to these forums because you are one of the organizations that we depend on to support us fully as we move forward. And as we go further into this, we expect certain pushbacks and so on, and we will depend on persons like yourself to assist us in moving forward. Thank you very much.